The housing first approach to homelessness is a model that has been growing nationally, and one might even suggest that it's a movement. But essentially, housing first is a paradigm shift in how we deal with homelessness. Rather than responding solely from an emergency based setting, there's a new focus on housing. But part of it has to be understood within the context of a linear model that we were operating for many years called the continuum of care, which was a linear model that assumed that there was, again, this progression from the streets to shelter to transitional programs to permanent supportive housing to housing. And what housing was housing was the prize at the end of this process. And the real difficulty with that particular model was that it didn't work, and that oftentimes they were compliance-based models in order for homeless people to reach that housing at the end. What Housing First suggests instead, given the nature of the disabilities, particularly of unaccompanied homeless, chronic homeless adults, is it takes the housing part from the end of that continuum and puts it up front. And so now the focus changes, that the focus is around how do we support these individuals with their tenancies, and what is it going to take in terms of service delivery to support those tenants. I often tell some of our providers who are thinking about moving towards a housing first approach that we're kind of shifting from this idea of the homeless person as the good client and focusing instead on the homeless person as the good tenant, and that all of our energy and resources should be directed around supporting those particular tenancies. And I think that this is critical given the number of people who've been on our streets for years, who are in our shelters long term for many, many years, that this system hasn't solved their issue. The Housing First model aims at taking those folks off the streets and out of the shelters and doing everything that we can, with the only successful outcome being keeping them housed. Any organization that's looking at this really needs to look at what's the ultimate outcome of what it is that they're doing. Are they really moving people beyond the shelter or beyond simply emergency resources and services? And what we've been encouraging people to do is think of new ways of taking resources, public or private, that they already have, and think about, is there a different way to use those in a way to ensure a housing outcome? Whether it's by redirecting their case management resources away from shelter and focusing instead on housing, whether it's changing their shelter programs from being kind of a long-term shelter program and more of a triage in terms of moving people rapidly back into housing. Those are some of the objectives that agencies who've made that switch take on, and those who've been successful are willing to kind of make this change in how they view the delivery of services to people, and again are more willing than to try to deliver those same services within a housing setting.